Millionaire dad sees Waitress sing to his nonverbal son, then follows her in secret. In the quiet corner of a modest Nashville diner, a well-dressed man watches his 5-year-old son, a boy who has never spoken a single word. The father grips his coffee so tight his knuckles go white. Then, a waitress kneels beside the child. She softly hums a lullaby. And suddenly, the boy smiles. He hasn't smiled in 2 years. The millionaire says nothing, but something cracks inside him. What is it about that voice? Who is this woman? And why does that melody sound heartbreakingly familiar? What begins as a silent moment of warmth becomes a life-altering search for the truth. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm waffles filled the small Nashville diner. Ethan Foster, impeccably dressed in a $3,000 suit, entered with measured steps, holding his son Tommy's hand. The 5-year-old boy, with vacant eyes and immobile lips, walked as if his feet barely touched the ground. "Table for 2, please. Something discreet," Ethan requested, his voice revealing years of giving orders in boardrooms. The hostess led them to a secluded corner, while some patrons cast furtive glances at the child who swayed slightly in his seat. Tommy, diagnosed with severe autism, hadn't spoken a single word since his mother's death 2 years ago. "Tommy, you need to eat something," Ethan whispered, gently pushing the plate of pancakes toward his son. The boy turned his head, as if his father's words were incomprehensible sounds. Lena Cruz, the new waitress, observed the scene while cleaning a nearby table. It wasn't the first time she'd seen a child with special needs. She herself had grown up surrounded by different children in the foster system. "Everything okay here?" she asked, approaching with a genuine smile. Ethan barely looked up. "Yes, thank you." Lena's eyes settled on Tommy's untouched plate. Without thinking twice, she knelt beside the boy. "Hello, little sunshine," she said softly. Then, to everyone's surprise, she began to hum. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Her fingers picked up a small spoon, scooped a piece of pancake drizzled with honey, and brought it toward Tommy while continuing to sing, "You make me happy when skies are gray." Time seemed to freeze. Tommy, the boy who lived locked in his own world, suddenly focused his eyes on Lena. His lips, always motionless, slowly curved into a smile. Then he opened his mouth. Ethan dropped the newspaper he was pretending to read. A chill ran down his spine. The song. It was exactly the same one Emma, his late wife, used to sing every night while putting Tommy to bed. A melody that hadn't been heard in their home since the night before the accident. "How?" The word caught in his throat. Lena continued feeding Tommy, who now ate obediently. When she finished, she stood up with a slight blush on her cheeks. "Sorry if I overstepped," she murmured. "I work with special needs children on weekends and—" "It's okay," Ethan interrupted, unable to express the whirlwind of emotions that overwhelmed him. Behind his facade of control, something had cracked. As they left, he left an exorbitant tip under the water glass. In the car, he looked in the rearview mirror and saw something he thought was lost forever. Tommy moving his lips, trying to mimic the melody with guttural sounds. For the first time in 2 years, Ethan Foster, the powerful widowed CEO, whose fortune hadn't been able to buy a single word from his son, felt a spark of hope and something else he couldn't name. "Tomorrow, we'll come back," he promised, even though Tommy couldn't understand. Or maybe he could. What Ethan didn't know was that Lena, watching them leave, had felt something inexplicable, as if a forgotten melody resonated in some corner of her fragmented memory. And that night, in her dreams, a face appeared in her mind. A smiling woman singing the same song, holding the hand of a little girl who wasn't her. The clock had just struck 11 in the morning when Ethan parked in front of the cafe. Tommy, surprisingly, had asked for "son" that morning, gesturing toward the door. It was the first time he had shown interest in leaving the house voluntarily. The chime of the bell announced their entrance. Ethan scanned the place, searching for the face of the waitress from the day before, but only found unfamiliar faces. "Welcome," greeted a middle-aged man wearing a manager's apron. "Table for two?" "Actually," Ethan cleared his throat, feeling an unfamiliar discomfort. "We're looking for a waitress who served us yesterday. Young, dark hair, sang to my son." The manager frowned. "Lena? I'm sorry. She no longer works here." "Excuse me?" The news hit Ethan like an unexpected punch. "She resigned this morning, without prior notice." The manager lowered his voice. She'd never done that before. "It's a shame. She was a good employee." Tommy began to sway in his seat, his eyes searching for something he couldn't find. Ethan felt a pang of disappointment that surprised him with its intensity. "Did she leave an address? Phone number?" "Sorry, sir. Privacy policy." The manager walked away, leaving Ethan with a frustration he hadn't felt since losing Emma. Back in his Belle Meade mansion, Ethan watched Tommy play with a spoon, trying unsuccessfully to hum the melody he'd heard the day before. "What did she do to you, little one?" he murmured, stroking his son's hair. "What did you see in her that you haven't seen in any of your 5-star therapists?" That night, after putting Tommy to bed, Ethan did something he hadn't done in years: make decisions based purely on instinct. He called John Mercer, a private investigator he'd used for corporate matters. "I need to find someone," he explained, uncomfortable with the feeling of invading a stranger's privacy. "It's important for Tommy's therapy." While waiting for results, Ethan noticed small changes in his son. Fleeting glances, attempts at vocalization in front of the tablet, where he used to watch silent videos for hours. Dr. Delaney, Tommy's therapist, was astonished during her weekly visit. "There's been more progress in 3 days than in 6 months, she commented, observing how the boy tried to communicate. "What has changed?" Ethan told her about the waitress and the song. "That melody." Ethan swallowed hard. "Emma used to sing it every night. I stopped playing it after the accident. I couldn't bear it." "You should maintain that stimulus," the doctor suggested. "Whatever awakened in Tommy is valuable." On the 4th day, the first report arrived. Lena Cruz, 26 years old, no known relatives, grew up in the foster system. Her last registered home, an orphanage in Austin, Texas. As he read the document, a chill ran down Ethan's spine. Austin. The place where Emma had grown up before being adopted by a wealthy family. "It must be a coincidence," he murmured. That night, Ethan dreamed of Emma. She was singing, but not to Tommy, but to a little girl he didn't recognize. Upon waking, his pillow was damp with tears he didn't remember shedding. What he didn't know was that, miles away, Lena woke up from the same recurring nightmare. An accident, screams, and a woman calling her by a name that wasn't hers while the music of "You Are My Sunshine" faded into the darkness. The name of the orphanage, Sunshine Home for Children, shone in the header of the report Ethan held in trembling hands. It couldn't be a coincidence. It was the same place where Emma had spent her first 8 years of life before being adopted by the Montgomerys, a wealthy family from Dallas. That afternoon, while Tommy slept, Ethan went down to the basement and dusted off a box he had avoided opening for 2 years. Emma was written in his own handwriting on the outside. The scent of lilacs, his wife's favorite perfume, escaped like a ghost when he lifted the lid. Among photos and love letters, he found a yellowed brochure, the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Sunshine Orphanage. In a faded photograph, smiling children formed a circle. Ethan ran his fingers over the handwritten names on the back. Emma C. was there, next to Elena C. "Elena," he whispered, and the name resonated in the empty room like a revelation. With his heart pounding, he called his driver. "Take me to Austin, now." The trip in his private jet lasted less than 2 hours. Mrs. Reba Johnson, 78 years old, former director of the now-closed orphanage, received him in her modest home with a cautious expression. "Mr. Foster, to what do I owe the honor of your visit?" she asked, serving tea in mismatched cups. "I need to know about Emma, my wife." Ethan placed the photograph on the table. "And about Elena." The elderly woman's face paled. Her age-marked hands trembled slightly. "Some things are better left alone, Mr. Foster." "My son has been silent since Emma died," he replied, with a vulnerability that surprised him. "Until a woman named Lena Cruz sang him the same song Emma used to sing." Reba closed her eyes, as if seeing a painful memory. "Elena was Emma's younger sister," she finally confessed. "They arrived together after their parents died in a fire. Emma was 6. Elena barely 3. What happened to them? The Montgomerys wanted to adopt Emma, but not the little one." The elderly woman looked away. In those times, separating siblings was common. The policy was to give them a new start, without ties to the past. "Emma never mentioned having a sister," Ethan murmured, feeling the ground shift beneath his feet. Children were told to forget, to start anew. Reba took a sip of tea. "But some things are never forgotten, Mr. Foster. They're just buried." Returning to Nashville, Ethan ordered a deeper investigation. The results arrived at midnight. Lena Cruz had used several surnames throughout her life. She had lived in Texas, Louisiana, and finally Tennessee, always with temporary and modest jobs. One detail stood out. She frequently worked with special needs children, often as a volunteer. "Murfreesboro," Ethan murmured, reading the last known address. Just 40 minutes from Nashville. That night, as he gazed at the stars from his terrace, something crystallized in his mind. Lena Cruz could be Elena, Emma's lost sister, Tommy's biological aunt. He looked toward the room where his son slept and made a decision. Tomorrow he would go to Murfreesboro. Not as Ethan Foster, the Millionaire CEO, but as a father seeking answers. In her motel room, Lena woke up startled, with the melody of "You Are My Sunshine" echoing in her ears. In her dreams, a woman whispered, "Never forget who you are, Elena. Never forget our song." The clean and bright laundromat in Murfreesboro smelled of detergent and worn-out hope. Ethan, dressed in jeans and a plain t-shirt, walked in pretending it was by chance. But his Rolex and upright posture betrayed him as someone who didn't belong there. He saw her immediately. Lena was stacking folded towels, softly humming. Her dark hair tied in a ponytail revealed a profile that, now that he looked closely, bore an uncanny resemblance to Emma. "Can I help you?" she asked, turning. Recognition lit up her eyes, followed immediately by alarm. "You." "I just want to talk," Ethan said, raising his hands in a pacifying gesture. "We have nothing to talk about, Mr." She paused, realizing she didn't know his name. "Foster. Ethan Foster." He extended his hand, which she didn't take. "Mr. Foster, I'm working. And honestly, I don't understand why you followed me here." A boy of about 7 with Down syndrome tugged on Lena's apron. "Song, Lena? Song now?" Lena's expression instantly softened. "In a minute, Mateo." She looked back at Ethan, her gaze hard again. "As you can see, I'm busy." "My son smiled for the first time in 2 years when you sang to him," Ethan said, letting go of the perfectly honed facade of control he'd mastered for decades. "I just wanted to thank you." Something in the sincerity of his voice made Lena hesitate. "You shouldn't be here," she replied, lowering her voice. "I can't get involved with people from your world." "My world?" Yes, your world of expensive suits and tips worth more than my weekly paycheck. Her tone was defensive, but there was pain in her words. People like you only show up in lives like mine when they need something, and then you disappear. An elderly woman collecting her laundry interrupted the tense moment. Lena, dear, are those my tablecloths? Yes, Mrs. Rodriguez, all clean and pressed. Lena stepped away, clearly relieved by the interruption. Ethan watched how she interacted with the customers. There was something natural in her kindness, something that couldn't be faked. She's an angel, Mrs. Rodriguez said, noticing his gaze. She sings for the children at the center while she washes their little clothes. Some of those kids don't have anyone else to listen to them. She does that often? All her life, I'd say. She has something special with children that others can't reach. The elderly woman gave him a knowing look. Like yours, right? I saw him when you came in. He's got that look. The look of a worried father. When the store emptied out for a moment, Ethan approached Lena again. I don't want anything from you, he said firmly. I just wanted you to know that what you did for Tommy, it mattered. He pulled out a card and left it on the counter. You helped my son smile. I'll never forget that. As he headed to the door, he heard Lena's voice, softer now. What's it called? His favorite song, I mean. Ethan stopped, not turning around. You are my sunshine, he answered, his voice cracking. My wife used to sing it to him every night before she died. He walked out without looking back, not seeing how Lena turned pale, how her hands trembled as she picked up the card and tore it in half. He didn't see how she carefully tucked the half with his phone number into her apron pocket. That night, Lena dreamed of a little girl in an orphanage room. An older girl sang, You Are My Sunshine, while embroidering a tiny sun on the sleeve of her dress. In the dream, the older girl called her Elena. Returning to Nashville left Ethan with a strange mix of hope and emptiness. In his office overlooking the Cumberland River, he couldn't focus on the multi-million-dollar contracts awaiting his signature. His mind kept drifting back to Lena, to the way her eyes darkened when he mentioned the song. The phone interrupted his thoughts. It was Reba Johnson. Mr. Foster, I found something you need to see, the elderly woman said with a trembling voice. An old registration notebook. It has drawings. Emma and Elena used to draw together. 3 hours later, Ethan was examining yellowed pages filled with childish sketches. 2 girls holding hands, suns drawn everywhere, and a shaky signature. Emma plus Elena. Look at this, Reba pointed to embroidery in the margin of one page. A small sun with uneven but delicate stitching. The girls learned to sew. Emma was especially gifted, the old woman explained. She embroidered suns on everything. Clothes, bed sheets, even on the sleeves of her sister's uniforms. Ethan touched the embroidery with reverence. He remembered the first gift Emma had ever given him, a necktie with a tiny sun sewn on the back. So you'll always carry light with you, she had said. Something clicked in his mind. He recalled the details on Lena's uniform at the diner, and later on her apron at the laundromat. Tiny yellow stitches he had mistaken for the company logo. I have to check, he muttered. Back in Nashville, with a plan forming, Ethan sent one of Tommy's favorite shirts to Lena's laundromat via courier. He included a simple note. Needs mending. 3 days later, the shirt came back. On the cuff, almost invisible unless one looked closely, was a tiny sun embroidered in yellow thread. Ethan called Reba immediately, sending her a photo of the stitching. It's identical, she confirmed. Emma used that exact pattern. With trembling hands, Ethan dialed Lena's number. It rang to voicemail. He tried again the next day. Still nothing. Driven by an urgency he couldn't explain, he drove to Murfreesboro. The laundromat was open, but Lena wasn't there. She left 2 days ago, a worker said. didn't leave an address. A passing neighbor added, "I saw her get on a bus to Atlanta. She had a small suitcase like she was in a hurry." Ethan felt the ground shift beneath him. He was reliving a strange echo of grief. First, he had lost Emma. Now, he felt he was losing Elena too, the sister Emma never had the chance to reunite with. That night, sitting by Tommy's bedside, he watched as his son slept, hugging the shirt with the embroidered sun. "We'll find her," he whispered. "Not for me, but for your mother. For you. For the family we were supposed to be." Meanwhile, in a tiny apartment on the outskirts of Atlanta, Lena stared at a yellowed photograph she had kept her whole life. Two smiling girls in front of a brick building. She didn't remember who the other girl was, only that the photo had always been with her, like an echo of something important she had lost. Her fingers instinctively traced the shape of a sun in the corner of the photograph, while she softly hummed, "You Are My Sunshine," not understanding why that song always brought tears to her eyes. The phone rang again. Ethan Foster's name lit up the screen. For the 10th time, she let it go to voicemail. She wasn't ready for the truths that threatened to shatter the fragile walls she had built around her fragmented identity. The Hope School for Special Children was a modest building in a working-class neighborhood of Atlanta. Ethan, dressed in casual clothes to avoid attention, watched from his car. After a week of searching, he had finally found her. Lena was in the back courtyard with a group of children, forming a circle. Even from a distance, Ethan could hear her clear voice singing, "If You're Happy, and You Know It." The children tried to follow the movements, some struggling, others with overflowing enthusiasm. When the class ended, a small boy with signs of autism walked up to Lena and, to Ethan's surprise, kissed her cheek. "My sunshine lady," the little boy said in a labored but clear voice. Lena's smile held a mix of pride and pain that Ethan recognized immediately. It was the same expression he saw in the mirror every time Tommy made a small breakthrough. He waited until the children went inside and then approached the fence. "You have a gift with them," he said softly. Lena turned sharply. Surprise gave way to recognition, and then to resignation. "How did you find me?" There was no accusation in her voice, only exhaustion. "I have resources," Ethan replied simply. "And important reasons." Lena looked toward the school and then back at him. "Come. There's a park next door. I've got 15 minutes of break." They walked in silence to a bench beneath an old oak tree. The day was unusually warm for early spring. "Why are you running from me?" Ethan finally asked. Lena let out a humorless laugh. "I'm not running from you. I'm running from myself. From what I might discover. What do you think I'm going to find out?" Her eyes, so much like Emma's, it hurt to look at them, filled with tears. "You don't understand. If you knew, you'd hate me. Try me." Lena took a deep breath. "I was kicked out of 3 foster homes. The last one, when I was 10, they accused me of stealing jewelry. I didn't do it, but no one believed me." Her voice cracked. "After that, it was just temporary homes until I turned 18 and was on my own. That still doesn't explain why you think I'd hate you. Because people like you always want perfect. And She gestured to her surroundings, to her humble life. "I'm anything but perfect." Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "My wife's name was Emma Montgomery. She was born Emma Carter." Lena looked at him, confused by the sudden shift. "She grew up in the Sunshine Home for Children orphanage in Austin, Texas," he continued. "And she had a younger sister named Elena Carter." The color drained from Lena's face. Her hands began to tremble. "No," she whispered. "They were separated when Emma was adopted by the Montgomerys. She was told her sister had been adopted by another family, that it was better to forget the past." That can't be. Lena stood up shakily. I would have remembered having a sister. You were 3 years old, Elena, Ethan said gently, using her real name for the first time. And after trauma like that, it's common for children to block memories. My name is Lena, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Emma died 2 years ago in a car accident, Ethan continued. Tommy was in the car, but he survived. Since then, he hasn't spoken or smiled. Until he met you. Lena covered her mouth with one hand. Silent tears ran down her cheeks. Tommy is your nephew, Elena. A sob escaped her throat. My sister is dead? The sister I don't even remember having? Ethan nodded. His own pain mirrored on his face. I need you to meet Tommy, he said finally. Not for me, for Emma. For the boy who somehow recognized you through a song and a memory he didn't even know he had. Lena backed away, overwhelmed. I need to think. I need... And without finishing the sentence, she walked quickly back toward the school, leaving Ethan alone on the bench. What Ethan didn't see was Lena, once inside the school bathroom, pulling a small object from her pocket that she always carried with her, a yellow, sun-shaped button. The only tangible link to a past she didn't remember, but that had somehow always guided her steps. The weeks passed with the sluggishness of an hourglass. Every afternoon, Ethan took Tommy to the park near their mansion, hoping the fresh air and the swings would rekindle the spark he had seen at the diner. But the boy had returned to his silent, inaccessible world. Sunshine, Ethan repeated, showing him photos of Emma trying to sing the song himself. Tommy looked at him blankly, as if he had forgotten that brief moment of connection. One rainy April morning, the housekeeper entered Ethan's study with a small envelope. This arrived by mail, sir. No sender. Heart racing, Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a yellow ribbon with a tiny sun embroidered on it, identical to the one Emma used to wear in her hair. There was no note, but none was needed. The message was clear. Lena was ready to return. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. Ethan nearly ran to the door, getting there before the staff. Lena stood there, pale and visibly nervous, wearing a simple dress and her hair tied back with the same yellow ribbon she had sent. Hi, she said simply. You came, Ethan replied, not trying to hide the emotion in his voice. Lena nodded. I want to see Tommy, if you still allow it. The first meeting was anticlimactic. Tommy barely looked at Lena, focused instead on arranging his toy cars by color. She wasn't discouraged. She sat on the floor beside him and began softly humming while organizing the red cars. I'll come back tomorrow, she promised as she left. And she did. Day after day, with infinite patience, she sat with Tommy. Sometimes she sang. Other times she simply stayed, respecting his silence. On the 4th visit, Tommy handed her a yellow car, the first thing he had willingly shared with anyone since his mother's death. On the 6th visit, he took her hand. It's like there's an invisible connection between them, commented Dr. Delaney, watching from the doorway. Something that goes beyond conventional therapy. Ethan, who had kept a respectful distance to avoid pressuring either Lena or Tommy, felt a strange mixture of gratitude and pain watching them together. Sometimes, for a fleeting moment, he saw Emma's ghost in Lena's gestures. I don't want fame or gratitude, Lena told him one evening while Tommy slept on the couch. I just want to be part of his life. He's the only thing I have left of a sister I never knew. I understand, Ethan replied, and I thank you. Tommy hasn't responded to anyone like this since we lost Emma. The barrier of formality between them had slowly melted. The sir had become you, and occasionally their glances met with a mutual understanding beyond words. One day, while Lena sang softly to Tommy during dinner, the boy did something extraordinary. He opened his mouth and produced a deliberate sound, trying to follow the melody. "He's singing!" exclaimed Ethan, eyes brimming with tears. Lena nodded, never stopping the song, her own eyes glowing with restrained emotion. Dr. Delaney was amazed by the progress. "There's a neurological link between music and language that we're just beginning to understand," she explained. "But what's happening here goes beyond science." Week by week, Tommy slowly emerged from his silence. He began to show interest in activities he once ignored. His therapists reported significant advances in nonverbal communication. And for the first time in years, Ethan Foster smiled with genuine peace. What he didn't know was that each night, after leaving the mansion, Lena sat in her small rented apartment, going through the few belongings she had from childhood, searching for fragments of a story she still couldn't fully remember. Among them, a faded photograph of two little girls and a yellow sun-shaped button she had always considered her lucky charm, but now recognized as a link to a past that destiny, through a simple song, had decided to return to her. 6 months passed like a sigh. The calendar marked October, and golden leaves fell over the gardens of the Foster mansion like tiny suns descending from the sky. Lena was no longer an occasional visitor in Tommy's life. She had rented a small apartment near the special school the boy attended 3 times a week, and she saw him regularly. Her presence had become as natural as the air. What Tommy didn't know was that Ethan had discreetly arranged the payment for several courses for Lena. First, a music therapy workshop, then an introduction to early childhood education, and finally, specialized speech therapy classes. "I don't need your charity," she had protested upon discovering it. "It's not charity," Ethan replied gently. "It's an investment in the person helping my son, in the person connecting with a part of Emma I could never reach." The house that had once been wrapped in funereal silence now occasionally echoed with laughter and music. The staff, who for years had walked like shadows so as not to disturb their boss's perpetual mourning, watched the transformation in awe. One Thursday morning, while they were having breakfast on the sunny terrace, the miracle that no one dared to hope for finally happened. Lena was singing softly as she poured orange juice. Tommy, focused on his cereal, suddenly looked up and clearly pronounced, "You are." The glass Ethan was holding shattered on the ground. Lena froze, juice pitcher suspended in the air. "Tommy, what did you say?" Ethan whispered, unable to believe what he'd heard. The boy looked at them, a small crease of concentration between his brows. Then, deliberately, he repeated, "You are my sunshine." Ethan knelt beside his son, tears streaming freely down his face. Lena joined them, taking Tommy's small hand in hers. "Yes, my love," she said in a trembling voice. "You are our sunshine." The news spread like wildfire among Tommy's specialists. Dr. Delaney couldn't hide her emotion during the next session. "This is extraordinary," she declared. "There are cases of children regaining speech after selective mutism, but it's extremely rare in cases of deep trauma, combined with autism." Tommy's progress, though gradual, was steady. Single words at first, then short phrases. His body language had transformed, showing more openness and connection with his surroundings. One afternoon, the director of the special school approached Lena while she was picking up Tommy. "We've noticed your work with the children," she said. "You have a natural gift. We'd like you to give a short talk to parents about music and emotional connection." Lena turned pale. I'm not good at public speaking." "Think about it," the director insisted. "Your experience could help many families." That night, Lena shared her dilemma with Ethan as they had dinner after putting Tommy to bed. "I don't know what I could teach anyone," she confessed. "All I do is follow my instincts." "That's exactly what you should share," Ethan replied. "Your story, your connection with Tommy. It could give hope to other parents who are where I was 6 months ago." He looked into her eyes, something he did often lately, always sparking a peculiar current between them. "Tell your story, Elena," he said softly, using her real name, something he only did in particularly intimate moments. "Our story." 2 weeks later, Lena stood in front of a small auditorium filled with parents and therapists. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was firm as she shared her experience with Tommy and other special children. She didn't mention that she was Tommy's biological aunt. That part of the story remained private, a treasure shared only between her and Ethan. Among the audience, Tommy watched her proudly, wearing a shirt she had embroidered with tiny suns on the collar. At the end of her presentation, there was a moment of silence, followed by enthusiastic applause. Parents with tears in their eyes approached to ask questions, to share their own stories. When the room finally emptied, Ethan walked up to her. "You were wonderful," he said, taking her hands in his. "Emma would be proud." Lena blinked to hold back her tears. "It's strange to miss someone you don't remember ever knowing." "But you do," he replied gently. "You miss her in every cell of your body, in every note you sing." Their eyes met, and for a fleeting instant, something deeper than gratitude or shared grief passed between them. "You gave me back something I thought was lost forever," Ethan whispered. "You gave me back the sun." In that moment, they both knew that what had begun as a search for answers had transformed into something neither of them dared name yet. Cumberland Park glowed under the afternoon sun. Ethan had discreetly reserved the open-air amphitheater for a special event, a small concert for families of children with autism and other special needs. There were no posters advertising the event, no media coverage, just personal invitations to families who, like his own, struggled daily to connect with children in a world that often failed to understand them. Lena had spent weeks preparing a small children's choir, including Tommy. The boy's transformation in recent months had been extraordinary. Though he still faced social challenges typical of his condition, he was now able to express basic emotions and participate in structured activities. Beneath a canopy decorated with yellow ribbons, Lena arranged the children in a semicircle. Tommy, dressed in a white shirt and blue pants, looked nervous but determined. Among the audience, Ethan watched with a mix of pride and awe. There was something surreal about being there, seeing his son, who not long ago lived locked inside an impenetrable world, getting ready to sing in front of strangers. Dr. Delaney, seated beside him, squeezed his arm with emotion. "This is a gift, Ethan. Not just for Tommy, but for all of us." The crowd hushed as Lena stepped in front of the small group. Her voice, clear and melodic, floated through the amphitheater. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." The children joined in, some with shaky voices, others with uneven but genuine enthusiasm. Tommy, at first, only moved his lips. But then, in the second verse, it happened. His voice, small but audible, rose above the others, perfectly in tune. "You make me happy when skies are gray." Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. Around him, other parents began to cry silently, recognizing the miracle unfolding before them. When the song ended, the applause was gentle, restrained, mindful of some children's sensory sensitivities. Tommy looked for his father in the crowd and smiled, a full, unguarded smile, before taking a small bow. Ethan, unable to contain his emotion, knelt beside his son as he returned to him. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered, hugging him carefully. Tommy replied with words Ethan would never forget. "Mom heard me. From the stars." Across the stage, Lena struggled to maintain her composure while receiving congratulations from parents and therapists. Her eyes found Ethan's through the crowd. He reached out his hand, and she came forward, joining him and Tommy in an embrace. For one perfect moment, the three of them formed a complete circle, as if an invisible presence was connecting them. When most of the families had left, Lena pulled an envelope from her bag and handed it to Ethan. "I want you to read this at home," she said in a soft but firm voice. "It's important." "What is it?" he asked, intrigued by her tone. "A project I've been working on. Something that might help other children like Tommy." That night, after putting his son to bed, Ethan opened the envelope alone in his study. Inside was a detailed proposal for an inclusive music education program for children with various conditions. Lena had researched, consulted with specialists, and designed a curriculum combining speech therapy, music therapy, and adapted pedagogy. The final page included a proposed budget and a blank space for the program's name. Lena had written by hand, "Sunshine Foundation." Ethan picked up a pen and gently crossed out "Sunshine," writing above it, "Emma Montgomery." Then he added a note, "No name of mine, only hers." The next day, when Lena arrived for her usual visit, Ethan handed her the envelope. "I approve it," he said simply, "with one condition." She flipped through the pages until she found the change. "Emma Montgomery?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure?" "Completely. This is her legacy, just as much as ours." Their eyes met, communicating more than words ever could. There were no rushed promises or grand declarations, just a shared certainty. Something deeply broken had begun to heal. "Tommy asked for you this morning," Ethan said. "He wants you to teach him how to embroider suns on his school backpack." Lena smiled through her tears. "I'll teach him what Emma taught me, even if I don't consciously remember it. My hands remember." As they walked toward the house together, the setting sun cast their shadows across the lawn, merging them into a single long figure that, from a certain angle, looked like the shape of a sun. Oakwood Cemetery shimmered with the colors of fall. Golden and copper leaves covered the pathways like a natural carpet, softly crunching beneath the steps of Ethan, Tommy, and Lena. It was the first time Lena accompanied them to visit Emma's grave. A year had passed since that day at the diner, and life had settled into a new rhythm. Slower, but infinitely richer. The white marble headstone was simple, just as Emma would have wanted. Emma Montgomery Foster, beloved wife and mother. Her light will never fade. Tommy, now 6 years old, walked confidently, holding a small package wrapped in yellow paper. He had prepared for this moment for days. "Hi, Mommy," he said clearly, kneeling before the grave. He carefully unwrapped the package, revealing a small pillow embroidered with tiny yellow suns and the words, "You are my sunshine," in childish but legible letters. Ethan knelt beside his son, his voice breaking with emotion. "Your son wants you to know that he sings now, with his voice and with his heart." Tommy placed the pillow against the headstone, smoothing out its wrinkles with his small hands. "Aunt Elena taught me how to make suns, like you taught her." Lena, who had remained a few steps behind, finally approached. Around her neck hung a yellow ribbon with a pendant containing a photo of 2 little girls, now confirmed to be herself and Emma. With trembling hands, she untied the ribbon and laid it beside Tommy's pillow. "E+E," she whispered, pointing to the initials embroidered on the ribbon. "Elena and Emma. I remember now." And it was true. In the past few months, fragments of memory had surfaced from the depths of her mind. An older girl brushing her hair, teaching her how to embroider, promising they would never be apart. Promises life had broken, but which now, in some mysterious way, were being fulfilled. The three of them remained in silence before the grave, united by an invisible yet unbreakable bond. Tommy, between Ethan and Lena, took their hands and placed them together over his own. As they returned to the car, Lena pulled a worn, leather-covered notebook from her bag. "I found this a few weeks ago, in a box Mrs. Reba sent me from the orphanage," she explained, handing it to Ethan. "I think you should have it." Ethan opened the notebook with reverence. The yellowed pages contained children's song lyrics written in neat handwriting, illustrated with simple yet expressive drawings. On some pages, he recognized Emma's handwriting. On others, there were clearly childlike scribbles. And on the last page, a drawing of two little girls under a radiant sun, with an inscription at the bottom: "Elena plus Emma, sunshine forever." "She never forgot me," Lena murmured, as silent tears ran down her cheeks. "Even when I couldn't remember her, she kept our connection alive." Ethan closed the notebook, pressing it against his chest. A feeling of peace enveloped him, unlike anything he had experienced since Emma's death. It wasn't the absence of pain, but the presence of something new and precious that coexisted with the loss. "Daddy?" Tommy's voice broke his thoughts. "Can we get ice cream? Aunt Elena promised to tell me stories about when she and Mommy were little." "Of course, champ." As the car pulled away from the cemetery, Ethan watched in the rearview mirror as Tommy leaned toward Lena, listening intently while she began telling stories, half-remembered, half-imagined, about two little girls who once sang beneath the Texas sun. The Emma Montgomery Foundation would open its doors the following month, offering music programs for children with special needs. Lena would serve as its director, Ethan, its silent benefactor. And Tommy, the boy whose silence had connected two souls separated by fate, would be the first student to walk through its doors. There were no certainties about what the future held for Ethan and Lena. The shadow of Emma would always remain between them, not as a barrier, but as a bridge. But for now, in this perfect moment, as the autumn sun bathed the landscape in golden light, they needed no certainties. Only gratitude for having found, among the broken pieces of their lives, the threads to embroider a new beginning. A beginning as warm and radiant as the suns Emma and Elena once drew together so many years ago, in a notebook time could never destroy. Some wounds aren't visible, and some voices don't need words to heal. Ethan found not just a part of his wife, but a missing piece of himself. And through a simple song, three souls broken by time found their way back to the light. Sometimes, healing begins when we stop trying to fix everything and just listen. What part of this story touched you the most? And what would you have done in Ethan's place? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, hit the like button, and comment below telling us what country or city you're watching from. It helps us bring you even better stories. And don't leave yet. Click the final card on your screen to watch the next emotional story we chose just for you. Thank you for being with us today.